Hi everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of January 4th, 2020. This horoscope is brought to you by onemillionnights.com. We have a really active and powerful sky playing out all throughout the week, all throughout the month, and all throughout the first quarter of the year. So there is so much to say. These energies have so many different dimensions, expressions, nuances, feelings to them, that it's really difficult to decide what to focus on, what would be more relevant, what to be more useful. And of course, it has a really positive, constructive, creative, and problem-solving part. But it can also create a sense of great urgency, sense that inner forces are almost driving us, determining us to act very quickly and just get out of whatever crisis we may be facing in our lives. And also if there might be still lingering blockages or stagnations in any areas of our lives, this energy can just awaken all our senses in a rather extreme sense that we have to act now, the change has to come now, and we have to do everything in our power to enable it, to trigger it, enact it. It doesn't matter how our personal situations are looking at the moment, it is still energizing us in a really intense way. And this can be something really positive for certain people because they will have all that energy, all that inner drive, all that inner impulse to go out there and do something rather practical. But for other people, even though they might need the same kind of energy, but this can turn into a really strong anxiety or rage or anger, because if they're overwhelmed by this energy, acting on impulses and that imminent sense of urgency might actually guide them to make certain decisions, take certain actions little bit prematurely, and that can complicate things in the longer run. And of course, the same thing is valid globally and collectively as well, because the energies are shifting, the situation is changing, and both, leaders, professionals, and citizens, everyone alike, needs to adapt to how the situation is evolving, regardless if we look at the more negative side or positive side of it. Well, both expressions are advancing, evolving, becoming something else at the same time simultaneously. And also what is rather special about next week is that we are going to have 3 planets in an erratic degree, which means 29 degrees of the sign they transit, and when they reach this point, their symbolism is greatly amplified, and usually the shadow expression becomes dominant. And that kind of energy gives all of us a sense of urgency, a sense of culmination. Of course, it can be just something purely psychological, but many times it can also be rather karmic, so we can actually work with that for endings, for closures, for completions, and also to be able to make a choice, make a decision, or if there is any situation which needs some kind of resolution, it needs some kind of action from our behalf, well, all those situations can become that much more critical, that much more amplified, calling us almost to take action, to do something, or at least to think it through. And this is exactly how we are opening the week, because around the 5th of January, Mars is going to be an erratic in its home sign of Aries, and that is a pretty intense energy. Mars rules Aries, it is the sign of the warrior, Mars is the planet of war, of action, of power, of ambition, will, sovereignty. It represents the male principle. So when it gets to the energetic degree of its home sign, well, everything is that much more intense, that much more amplified. So on one hand, this is a really powerful psychological energy, just energizing us with the specifics of the fire element. So naturally, the downside of that is irritability, the disposition for conflict, for lashing out, for defending your sovereign rights. But all of these more violent expressions of Mars have been a major part of our everyday lives for a good couple of months now, or even more specifically, the last 6 months when Mars entered in this part of the sky, and it had conversation of tensions with the planets in Capricorn. So we are really accustomed to this energy, the protests, regardless if they're like physical people going to the streets, or if it's legal like petitions or legal battles, political battles, the change of sides politically speaking, or different parts of society trying to battle each other legally or morally, or people simply demanding their rights, their voices to be heard, their options and opinions to be taken into consideration. So basically this energy is something that we are already more used to than we would like it to. The main difference might be that this energetic Mars is going to hold an outer sign square with Saturn. So the symbolism of this is a little bit different, because both this Mars, but even that Saturn, empowers people in different ways, whereas just a few months ago, Saturn was in its home sign of Capricorn. So that basically represented that it was centralized power, governments, authorities, institutions, etc., law enforcement, who had the upper hand from more than one perspective. But this is where everything changes, and it's all about the people and all about individuals and what they want, what they think, what they want to accomplish. But at the same time, this can also represent that rather than people versus centralized power, it can be people versus people, like different groups, different people who share the same ideological opinions, visions, battling other ones. But of course this battle is symbolic. It doesn't have to be physical, it doesn't have to be like proper violence and conflict, although that is not excluded, especially with an energetic Mars. When Mars gets into this position, and it kind of does so like every 2 years, well, in those moments, in those, let's say, days, crime rate, and especially that which has to do with violence, anger, impulsivity, does increase, sometimes just a bit, but other times quite significantly. And of course, shortly after Mars enters that energetic degree, around the 6th or 7th of January, it will enter the sign of Taurus. Now this is a really significant energy shift, because our focus, our drive, our ambition will be invested into worth, value, finances, material things, the pleasure of the 5 senses. Basically everything that we embody, everything that we hold valuable. And Taurus is the symbol of the second astrological house. So matters of money, finances, how resources are being shared and split up. But of course, in the sense that what does the individual gain? It's not that much about collective, but rather how well is the individual doing? Because Mars is a very individualistic power. So everyone will be much more concerned about their own material financial situation, even if it's just a psychological energy like self-worth, whatever we hold valuable, whatever we love. Or, the degree in which we can just experience and perceive all the joys of life. Now, if that is limited and we find the limitations rather unfair, well, that means that this psychological bomb is going to detonate. Especially that as soon as it enters into Taurus, it is very soon going to be holding a square with Saturn and Jupiter. The good news is that these squares are not yet exact, they're not very powerful, they're not very impactful, but it does mean that the pressure is going to start building up and the stage is going to be set for the time when Mars is going to perfect its conjunction with Uranus, also in the sign of Taurus, and then Dark Moon Lilith. This takes place around the 20th of January, and it will be a really, really, really intense moment from all perspectives, psychologically, socially, politically, because on one hand, these two planets are the most dynamic and spontaneous, instantaneous from all the zodiac, and whenever they meet, well, their manifestation is almost instant and extremely impactful. So regardless from which perspective we'll look at it, even physically, well, this can mean some kind of earthquake, something shaking us up to the core. Like physically, it can represent weird, unusual, extreme weather phenomenon, or a true earthquake, volcanic activity, tsunamis, everything that has to do with the crust of the earth moving, shaking. This can also represent a heightened risk of accidents, calamities, man-caused disasters, of course by accident, but that doesn't make its expression less catastrophic. But of course, equally, it can mean a symbolic earthquake financially. Maybe something changes drastically, instantly and radically. And one part of this whole picture, which is almost guaranteed, well, that is going to be the political earthquake, symbolically, of course, because of the contradictory opinions, visions, plans, solutions for the economic part of the crisis, the values, the material goods, the resources. How are they going to be split, managed, arranged so that they can serve everyone, every category? And of course, at the same time, both Mars and Uranus will hold a square with Saturn, but this square, fortunately, won't be exact until February, so there is still time left. And by the time the square between Uranus and Saturn becomes exact, by then Mars would have moved out of this very dangerous position, of this very, very volatile conjunction. So it's not gonna be as bad as it can possibly get. But still, Uranus on its own is more than enough for revolution, for protests, for massive changes initiated by certain individuals, people fighting for equality, equity, humanitarianism, fairness, transparency, the truth. So January and February are going to be two very intense months where the crisis is still going to be at its peak moment, just that fortunately there are so very many other energies which offer solutions, which soothe, which, inspire, which give us a lot of inner strength, enough for us to overcome all of this and stay detached if that is one of our personal goals. But of course, all of this is a topic for future horoscopes, because this week we only get that energetic Mars, then Mars entering Taurus and starting to hold a square with Saturn and Jupiter. So this will still give us a lot of time to prepare, but as I said, the pressure is building up. We are once again in this cosmic pressure cooker, which will detonate very, very soon. But it isn't just Mars who is going to touch an anaretic degree. Venus and Mercury around the 8th of January are also going to be an anaretic degree of the signs that they transit in the present moment. So that means Mercury in Capricorn and Venus in Sagittarius. But very soon after, they will move on to the next sign. So Mercury will step into Aquarius and Venus into Capricorn. Now Venus in anaretic degree of Sagittarius, this energy might carry us a little bit away, because Venus is the symbol of everything that we value, our emotional needs, but very many times our practical, physical, material needs. It is a symbol of not just material well-being, but also emotional well-being. So it really depends on our needs and desires. Whatever it is that we need to have in our lives to feel more happier, to feel more loved, to feel more alive, so to speak, and not just materially, but the sign of Sagittarius is also our beliefs, our philosophies. It can be, travel, international travel, seeing the world. Sagittarius can basically reach the stars. There is no limit to it. So this energy has an upside, because it will really inspire us to reach for the stars, to accomplish our desires, our needs in their most extreme expression, if that makes any sense. But of course the downside of it is excess. So we have to be careful about how much money we spend, how much money we have the tendency to basically throw out if we are carried away by our wants, our needs. And also Venus is all about aesthetics as well. So around this day we have to kind of be careful what cosmetic changes we undergo. From the simplest expression of like dyeing or our hair or getting a new haircut, to the most physically impacting, as if surgeries and cosmetic procedures, stuff like that. On this day, around the 8th of January, we have to be careful not to get carried away by our emotions, desires, and most importantly, our aspirations. But very soon, Venus will move into Capricorn, where she's really, really down to earth, practical. She aims for all those things which are possible, which are probable, which can be accomplished through work, sacrifice, investment, or any other down-to-earth means to get something. And also Venus in Capricorn is all about duty and commitment. So yes, we get what we want, but we also offer. Or if we got what we wanted and we made a commitment in this sense, well, we have to honor it. And we also expect the same thing from everyone else, regardless if that anyone else is a company, institution, collective, or it is a person like your boss, an individual, associate, partner, etc. Now Mercury, on the other hand, is in the sign of Capricorn, and in an anaretic degree it can represent very important, relevant communication, conversations, thoughts and ideas, intellectual energy gaining a physical form, so the implementation of all those. And this can be a really good problem-solving celestial influence, because in order to achieve certain things, if we have to communicate with authorities, paperwork, correspondence, etc., that can go quite well and quickly, because there is a sense of urgency. and from both sides. So it's not just someone who is in need or someone who initiated this. And at the same time, Mercury in Capricorn can also represent the requirements in order, for example, to get something, achieve something, for any kind of relation with an institution. It can be work, it can be the government and one of its functions, it can be school, university if you're a student. But regardless of how this energy manifests in your life, depending on your personal situation, of course, it is still good news because it just amplifies communication, the flow of information. It even increases your own intellectual capacity in order to analyze things in a very down-to-earth manner and be able to anticipate the outcome of certain things. And of course, on the other hand, it can also mean that one way or another, we will be shown or communicated what it is that we need to do in order to solve problems or get to where we want to get or manifest what we want to manifest. Because Capricorn is the sign of manifestation, so that is where thoughts, ideas, or principles, or whatever we believe in, gets a physical form, a physical manifestation. It can be integrated into our lives in a very practical and down-to-earth sense, regardless of what that is. And then very soon Mercury will move on to the sign of Aquarius, where its symbolism has everything to do with the future, with technology, with intellectual work, with thoughts, ideas, brainstorming, epiphanies, that light bulb eureka moment, and also the relevant social connections that we have in our lives, because sometimes it may not be us personally who is the mastermind of something. It might be a friend, a professional, someone who we are connected to, and they might be able to inspire us, help us, guide us, teach us, show us the way, or come up with the most brilliant idea, plan, or solution. Mercury in the sign of Aquarius is always good for social media, for any kind of communication which has to do with reaching masses, with reaching a higher number of people, finding or attracting or somehow enabling new social connections to enter in our lives, getting connected to a group, to a community. And of course, Mercury in Aquarius is always about the future. It is always our plans, the next, what we want to do, what opportunities we have, and of course, how to get there. As soon as Mercury enters into the sign of Aquarius, well, very soon it is going to meet Saturn in the sky and afterwards Jupiter. So that means information, relevation. Saturn might represent all the external factors that basically Mercury has to process, Mercury being the planet of the mind. And of course, if we need any kind of help, any kind of support from others, may it be legal or material or, for example, welfare benefits, social security, this is a really, really good energy, Mercury meeting Saturn, because Saturn does represent the limitations, so whatever that prevents us from having all those things in our lives that we need. But at the same time, in the sign of Aquarius, it is also the duty and responsibility of the collective, of society, so to speak, to help out its members. So it is a rather humanitarian energy, protecting the individual. And by protecting the individual, of course, it also protects the whole of society. Happy individuals mean a happy society. So this energy is really good for getting help, giving help, And last but not least, it doesn't have to be any situation where we might have to have some help urgently in our lives. It can also be, for example, like projects where, for example, the government or an institution offers some kind of program to facilitate a business or to facilitate a certain activity, or it encourages, financial growth and employment and etc. Here in Europe, for example, we have this European grant or this scheme where it favors startup businesses. So this is also a very, very good energy for all of those things, especially the study, the research, and the analysis part, making up your project, creating your plan, refining it, readjusting it, asking the opinion of specialists, other people who maybe had the same experience. Or if you happen to have already started anything like this, well, this can be a moment of progress when something evolves in a favorable sense. Of course, soon after, Mercury will form the same conjunction with Jupiter. And since Jupiter is the planet of blessings, this is an even quicker and potentially more beneficial energy, because this can also represent synchronicity, certain things just aligning, the opportunity just appearing out of nowhere, or whatever that you have been focusing on mentally, for example, wherever you have invested your focus, your mental energy, your even willpower, although that is a very Martian kind of thing. But Mars is also squaring these planets, so it's there, definitely there. This Jupiter can very quickly make things come together, but that might not be everything. That might not be like the universe handing it down on a silver tray, because I said Mars squares this Jupiter and Uranus also squares this Jupiter. So even though the opportunity might arise very quickly out of nowhere, it still requires a lot of action from us. For example, Uranus in Taurus is all about getting out of our comfort zone. So even if it's like a big opportunity, it won't be something that is extremely comfortable for us. So it will need a moment of courage or a leap of faith, or trusting ourselves, our judgment, our intellectual capacity that we can do this. We can find a solution or a plan to overcome any obstacle. So, for those of us who can embody this self-supportive, self-encouraging attitude, this works so well with the expression of Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of optimism, faith, and of course, subjective inner truth, but that is the basis of everything that we have in our lives. So the more optimistic and positive we are, the better this energy can work in our favor. Because at the same time, if it is all those fears, insecurities, and doubts that we focus on, well, then chances are we might never get out of our comfort zones, or we might just miss these opportunities. Or if we start something big but with no inner confidence at all, well, it will just fall apart. So basically, these are the downsides, the dangers of Mercury meeting Jupiter and the squares it will hold with Uranus and then, of course, Mars. But, of course, at the same time, we also have supremely harmonious conversations held by Venus, which are really, really empowering, inspirational. They just ignite the fire of passion in our hearts. And this gives us a sense of genuine optimism, where it is not forced, it just comes naturally and easy. Well, one of these trines is Venus holding the trine with Mars. The first stage of this energy is happening right now, where Venus converses in this manner with Mars. when both of these planets are still in fire signs, Venus in Sagittarius and Mars in its home of Aries, but towards the very end of the week, they will hold a trine from Earth signs, Mars being in Taurus and Venus being in Capricorn. And the Earth sign trine, well, that is ambition, it is determination, it is the willingness to endure, the willingness to work for whatever we want to. And it can also be an energy of patience, which is very unusual for Mars. Mars is never ever patient. Maybe when it is in the sign of Capricorn, where it is very focused, concentrated, and it follows its calculations precisely. But this time around, it is Venus who is in the sign of Capricorn, and she can temper this Mars by focusing on the big picture, the accomplishment, the moment when all the sacrifice, work, and patience is gonna be worth it. And when there is a big prize in the picture, well, then Mars's expression can turn into perseverance and ambition, doing everything the situation requires for it to get there, accomplish what it wants. And if that is being patient or taking things slowly and steadily, well, it's absolutely fine. Now, of course, this will have a lot of challenges when Mars meets Uranus, but that is exactly why, even before that meeting takes place, Venus and Mars converse in this supremely harmonious way in order for that Mars to become ambitioned, to be able to hold on and not give in to the triggers, maybe temptations, because Mars and Saturn are the two malefics, and whenever they meet in tension, well, that can represent like a karmic exam where we get the temptation to see if we can diligently, outsmart it, overcome it, or through wisdom and life experience. But at the same time, if we fail, that just means that we still need to learn the lesson. And talking about the lesson, Venus will also hold this trine with Uranus, and there is a very strong synergy between these planets because Venus rules Taurus, the sign that Uranus is transiting, and this energy can mean surprises, unexpected twists and turns of events, and since it's a trine, of course, these events can be positive, full of pleasure, maybe full of ease, being in a state of flow, for example, where many things that we might desire or we might need might just come to us with great ease, as if exactly handed down on a silver tray. But these can also represent quite powerful distractions, because when the distraction is caused by pleasure and joy and all of that, it might make us a little bit passive or to stray from our original goal. Or, this conversation between Uranus and Venus can also represent meeting a person who can help us in all of our goals or whatever we want to accomplish. But then the downside of this is that person might be doing the hard work for us, and if we accept it in this manner, yes, that solves the problem, no worries at all, but at the same time, we do fail the karmic test of responsibility, or at least co-creating, owning our part, the ambition and determination and perseverance having to still be there even if it's easy. So where I'm actually trying to get with this analysis is that this Venus-Mars trine is really, really powerful and really good, but we need to preserve this energy even after this conversation breaks up. And this isn't the kind of expression where we have to stay focused and almost obsessed on doing things a certain way. The goal remains, but if the situation might require us to readapt, to change our tactics, to change the way we want to do it, then we also have to be versatile and adaptable and work with what we've got. So only the goal, achieving whatever we desire, whatever it is more urgent in our lives, it is that part which has to be preserved, which has to stay the same, which we have to focus on, but not how we achieve it, when we achieve it, or who with. Because that part is going to be rather chaotic because of that Uranus, both because of the squares, but also because of the trines, because good and bad, like for example triggers and challenges, but also blessings, can come simultaneously, and we must not allow these to break our ambition and our willpower. Well, this concludes next week's horoscope. Thank you so much for listening. And if you would like 1 million nights to keep on delivering free guidance and free horoscopes all throughout this year as well, please consider sponsoring us. Or of course we can make all of these videos available for your channel, for your media platform, for your website. Or we can also create exclusive ones just for you and your platform. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, bye for now.